So let's start with the approval of the order of the agenda. It's an action item.
Move to approve.
Second.
Do you want to change this?
Do I
You
do
want to
that now?
move old business, community service workers discussion from old business 7A to after director's report.
Yeah, let's do that. We don't need to, do we need to formalize
It's a-
that?
it's an
We do need to
agenda.
formalize that.
Okay, well, I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And then
And then reassert it?
reassert it with the change in order.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Discussion? No, okay. That's approved. Okay, the minutes of the September 18th meeting. Another action item.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Waking up here.
Discussion, or all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Discussion, I might be doing that out of order. Maybe it's discussion, then all in favor. Okay. Any discussion?
We just did
No,
this,
we're
like-
all in favor. There's no opposed. Sorry for making it difficult back there, Betsy, for the minutes. Okay, so that is approved. So let's move on to Dakota for the staff report.
Hi,
Hi.
my name's Dakota Qualley, and I'm here for the staff report. The staff updates and staff development activities. Cheryl Lackman and Lori West are reviewing the apps for LA1 position at Maine. October 19th, Mike Mitchell will be there from the City HR department, and he'll be providing active shooter civilian response training to library staff. Our programs, our upcoming events and programs in the children's department, October 20th, we're having the members of the NDSU Herpetology Club and staff from NDSU's Geosciences department, and they'll help us celebrate the age of reptiles, more than just dinosaurs, for National Fossil Day. Yeah, this is a all ages event. And November 5th through the 7th, we'll be having friends from the North Dakota School for the Deaf, and they'll be our special guests and teach us what it's like to use American Sign Language to communicate and share stories using signs. This is for ages 3 to 6. And the teen events, the book tasting event is actually more of a kind of a speed dating for books. Basically, they will have tables set out with some genres on the tables. They'll spend 5 minutes reading each book, and it's a bit of an open house with snacks to share. So, and then there's the October 22nd Sewing 101. For the adults, there's the Jazz into Fall. That'll be every Sunday afternoon. October 25th, author P.S. Duffy will visit as part of the One Book, One Community reading project and share her book, The Cartographer of No Man's Land. Her event will be held at the Knutson Center Centrum on the campus of Concordia College and is free and open to the public. It's co-sponsored by the Friends of the Fargo Public Library. And we are offering our first murder mystery with Behind the Books, a library tour and murder mystery. I've been enjoying watching them practice for this. It's going to be quite the event. So there are 2 after-hours sessions, so people get to be in the library after we're closed, which is kind of fun. Past events, children's Crafternoons has started up again at Carlson and has expanded to Northport. They're very well attended, and patrons really enjoy this. In the last month, Crafternoons has brought in over 500 kids and their families. The teens, we held a board game night on October 3rd to highlight the library's board game collection, and Paradox Comics and Cards was there to assist, and it was quite fun. And for the adults, for the past programs, the Pakistan Culture event was Sunday, September 16th. 31 people attended, and this event was in partnership with the Cultural Diversity Resources and was part of the 2018 Welcoming Week series of events.
Okay. Any questions for Dakota? Dakota, are you just filling in for Sunny this
I am,
this
yeah.
week? Okay, or so he'll come back then?
You will, yeah.
He will come back. Well, it's nice
Sunny
to
will
have
come
you. Well, it's nice to have you, and this was
Thank you.
interesting stuff. The I know the One Book, One Community event is a big thing every year for those of you who are kind of new to that. So if you can attend the October 25th thing, that's awesome. And I think we also, doesn't the board also get invited to like a private meet and greet with the
Right, there's the
author?
tea.
The tea. with
Did
the-
you guys receive invites, email invites? Okay, good,
We
good.
did. So yeah, that's a great event. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Dakota? No? Okay, thank you. So let's see what we have next. That would be Tim with the director's report.
Yeah, per your packet, under Goal 5, you see we had a building security review meeting, and that was really, the genesis of that was a situation, an incident we experienced at the main library around the last week of September. An individual, about 2 o'clock in the morning, came on the east end of the building with a chunk of cement and threw it at the door. Initially, he hit the top part of the door, which kind of scrambled the door's brains. Then the second time, he smashed the window and then promptly took off. So with that, it was kind of looking at, well, obviously, door security, security cameras and lighting improvements. I'm happy to say we've identified and gotten support from the city in terms of improving lighting on the outer areas on either end of the main library, and also looking at resources in terms of the current operating budget to purchase improved security cameras for Maine, and to have security cameras at Northport and improved cameras down at Carlson. So able to find resources for that. So we're moving forward, given the situation. And the new window's in there right now. The guy's fixing the door a little bit more, so we're happy about that. But that's just kind of the situation we ran into. Nothing I've ever experienced before, but certainly we're taking measures to kind of counteract it.
Did you guys find out who did it?
The security camera, all it showed is all you see is a pair of jeans.
Okay.
Everything's dark, come up, picks up, smash.
Hence the request for better.
That and lighting. You know, lighting is the biggest deterrence. I think the outer edges of the concourses are both really, really dark, underlit, and so we're working on that. So.
Okay. All right, anything else you want to discuss
Nope.
with that? Okay.
That's the-
Do you want to get into, okay, well, then we'll pause there before we get into the statistical reports, or is there anything else? you want
No,
to-
we're going to go, let's go right into
community
number
service
7,
workers?
old business. So
Okay.
if everybody wants to come up and take a seat.
Well, a refresher if the board remembers that. So a couple months ago, we were revisiting a policy about volunteers, and the policy had a stance about not having people who were ordered to do community service through a court measure. And so we all debated that, and there's concerns on, is it too broad, but also we got to make sure that it makes sense for the library, both in terms of safety and efficiency. So Tim has been tracking this down, and he has brought some individuals who will help, enlighten us on this situation. So we have a full audience today, as you can see. So
Yeah, for the sake of the audience, if you guys could come up
yeah, by a microphone, that would be.
by a microphone. And we're very thankful for Kelsey from the Restore nonprofit that works to get folks that need to do community service opportunities. Also Nancy Morris from the City Attorney's Office, and Jill Manette from City HR.
Great. So you guys all have microphones. I don't know if yours is on, Nancy. I don't see a green light.
Yeah.
I think he'll turn
is-
them on.
Oh, okay. We're all set. Okay, so should we start with Restore? Because I know.
I think it's, Rachel, however you want to move forward. I think Restore was kind of brought to my attention by Rachel, so I guess we'll have Kelsey just kind of give us a background of what Restore is and what you guys do.
Okay.
And then certainly the city side will come from Nancy and Jill.
All right, so Restore is a nonprofit organization that works with municipal court, district court, juvenile probation, and adult probation here in Cass County. So what we do is we have many different programs that we offer, but we also offer the community service program, where we do a screening with all the offenders who have court-ordered community service, and then we place them within nonprofits within their area. So when we do the screening, we do a background check to make sure that if there's certain limitations per each site, if they don't want to take any certain offenses, we will screen those out and only provide them with the sites that will take the types of offenses that they will contract with. And then we do provide like a insurance policy for medical, so if they were to get injured or anything, that they can't come at the work site, but we would cover their medical costs for any damages.
Okay, maybe we'll just do an overview from everybody first, and then kind of open it up for questions, concerns, comments, and then let everybody answer. So Nancy, if you want to go next.
Sure, I'm happy to. Tim had forwarded to me the contract and said that you were considering this, and so I took a look at that, and I have some concerns with the contract and the liability issues that would come as a result. I visited briefly with Kelsey. I have talked to the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund, who is the insurer for the city of Fargo, which would cover the library and its facilities, and we have some concerns with the contract and the availability of the contract. What I understand Restore has is the potential that it looks like a workers' comp kind of policy, but I'm not real sure. I haven't seen that policy. But that wouldn't address then if somebody else was injured as a result of that person's placement in the facility for the city of Fargo. So that would be kind of a policy question that would be something that the city of Fargo would need to be looking at, because it's an overall arching policy there. We did talk a little bit about resources, which I think is a question that Tim will get into more as to is the employee coming in with supervision, who keeps track of the hours, what kind of responsibility is placed on the library, and what kind of work is available at the library for that individual to be doing. And then when you look at the library, then you also think about, we're looking into, are there other departments in the city of Fargo that have engaged in this type of service? And there has been one, not Restore, but it was a different kind of setting where the individual came, there was 5 or 6 individuals that were working with a supervisor that was assigned to that place. So there's that constant supervision from the facility for the work release kind of programming. So I think it's a policy that we need to look at. That does it work for the library? Does it work for others? Is that something that we're putting the city at risk? And is that something then, of course, that the city commission will need to weigh in on as the deciding factor? So, like I said, I looked at the insurance, I looked at the contract. I would not recommend that the library sign the contract as it is currently presented. The first provision is indemnification from the library to Restore for providing a work site, and that seems counterintuitive to the fact that we'd be cooperative in the relationship, and nor can the city provide an unlimited indemnity because we are a municipality. So those are kind of our discussions. Whose employee is it? How do we, for the background check, as I understand, you do a background check, but the city of Fargo does a background check for all employees of the city of Fargo, and the city of Fargo does a background check for all volunteers of employees of the city of Fargo. So there are volunteers that work with, like, the police department, things like that, but they all have city of Fargo background checks. So again, whether it's sufficient or not for employment with the city of Fargo would be another question that's still out there.
Yeah, and I would just add a couple of things. Again, I'm Jill Manette, Director of Human Resources for the city. A couple of items to add, that we've discussed just briefly. Whenever we look at the potential for employment or for assignment or volunteer opportunities, we want to look at the potential nature of the work that would be performed and look at, whether we can determine if we have appropriate work assignments for individuals. So, some of those considerations, looking again at the type of work, at the typical length of assignment that an individual is available to complete the work, looking at what training is necessary to make it a successful relationship for that individual being placed, as well as for the organization. And then, as Nancy mentioned, the consideration of who is going to oversee the work that's being done as well, and what kind of commitment that is for our staff. Nancy already talked about the insurance question, so, I would just reiterate that those are questions that are considerations that we need to think about as well. And then just really, again, weighing the benefit for, in this case, for the library, potentially for the city, if this became an expanded relationship, and weighing kind of those benefits of supporting a program with the overall oversight that occurs with this type of relationship as well. So those are just some considerations for you to think about.
Okay, opening it up. Folks have comments, questions, concerns?
May I?
Yeah.
May I go first? I guess at this juncture, I think it'd be helpful to hear your perspective.
Again, per the original conversation, the tough thing for us is that ours is a very public-facing institution, obviously. We have a lot of sensitive information in terms of what folks are checking out, checking in, and everything. And so ancillary duties available would be difficult. The other thing is, in terms of the supervision of individual or individuals, and in that we don't have a lot of staff. We really don't have staff time to create another supervisory layer, if you will. To me, that's one of the kind of limited possible tasks that they could do. Now, that's something we can think about in massage or what have you. But the supervisory time of library staff or library supervisors in regards to this, we're open about 186 hours a week. That's nights, weekends, a lot of moving schedules based on part-time folks, full-time folks. Life intervenes, they get sick, we're swapping schedules around, cover the bases. And to guarantee on any given day with all the hours that we have to cover at service points, to say that we would absolutely be locked in to have somebody there that doesn't get taken away by, ex-employee is sick, so I got to switch my schedule, I got to go down to Carlson and cover it down there versus up north or what have you. That's a challenge. And I would hate to then it falls on someone else or higher up or whatever. It's just the sheer number of hours that we have to cover. It's all the public, service points that we have to cover adequately. And given the ebb and flow of schedules and availability of folks, that adding another layer of that is problematic.
Okay, maybe I'll kick off questions. So it sounds like the two issues that were kind of identified as potential roadblocks in this process is we want to make sure we limit risk, and that there's oversight. Am I more? It seems like those are the two that.
Right, it's, because you figure if you have somebody coming and they have to get those hours done, then we have to create something that's absolutely locked in for them, and that the individual that they're going to report to is going to be there based on a very standard schedule. Our schedules are always evolving based on who gets sick or what happens on vacations and everything else. And I don't know how flexible the whole situation can be, but it's just staff time.
Right, so oversight and limiting risk. So why don't we kick it to Restore to see what you guys are, how you guys could potentially address those two concerns? Is the contract something that's set in stone? Is it something that you guys can work with? Or is it, I will open the floor to see what you think.
I'm not 100% sure on the covering everything that Nancy had talked about. That's more of my director stuff. Anytime we've ever had like a claim for if somebody got hurt or anything, that's all my boss is doing. I just more supervise the hours and everything and make sure that all the filing gets done on each case. But when it comes to like the supervising, anybody that you would have in charge, so like that would be any like general supervisors or mediocre supervisors, however, whoever has any like supervision over another person would be able to record that person's hours. And you guys can set it up however you want. Like if you want that person to call in each time before they come over, and you just say, yeah, we have availability from 8 to 5 today for workers. Anything after that is not available. So they would have to work with your schedule as well as their schedule.
So there's flexibility.
Yes.
And in terms of, don't we have a volunteer coordinator whose job it is to?
True.
So
And
is she
I-
keeping track of hours anyways?
Well, to a degree, yes.
Okay,
Um,
so she could be the contact point potentially for the supervisory. Is your concern more, because it seems like we got the hours tracked with that person, but is the concern more of feeling that the volunteer coordinator has to physically follow the person around and watch them?
Right, well, yeah, I don't know at what level, because our outreach coordinator,
Yeah,
Pam, I mean, she's going out of the, I mean, she's doing outreach herself.
sure, yep.
You know, so a vast amount of her time is prepping for taking materials out, or being out, or recruiting more volunteers.
Yeah,
So
you
she's
can't
not.
watch them.
Right, and she only has one full-time person and a part-time person that run
Yeah.
and then all the volunteers that she's managing.
But she does keep track of hours, because we get reports. on-
We rely on the volunteers to a certain degree to provide that as well.
Does that work with, can they also keep track of their own hours and just kind of report that to Pam, or?
Yep, I do have sites like that where they have to get all the, they write their own hours in, and then they approve them with the site coordinator, because I do work with a lot of volunteer coordinators. And then they verify that somebody was there that can vouch for that person, that they were there as well, like whether it be another worker or another volunteer. Because I have like a lot of nonprofits that have like full-time volunteers, not just community service workers. But then once it's signed by any supervisory person, they would then be approved.
In terms of the oversight concern as well, and I heard when you said that you can, working with the various nonprofits, that they can tailor it to maybe specific types of offenses that people had. Are there certain ones that, potentially, we could narrow it to
Well,
make it so that you didn't feel that they need to be supervised?
I guess, I don't have enough background in, other than what we run into on a daily basis of, I can't gauge, if they've done this, then they're this type of person, or they
Sure.
haven't done this, they're this type of person.
Yeah.
It would only be by who they are and talking to them and kind of sorting out who they are as a person. So obviously, I think theft would be a problem.
And it sounds like you mentioned sensitive information.
Right, and see, that's where it gets difficult to identify viable and meaningful tasks for them to do. We can't have them into the integrated system. Okay, that's a no-go. Maybe there's some stuff they could do, and that was, I've discussed this at a department heads meeting. That was the first big question. Tim, what are you going to have
Yeah,
them do?
that's a great question.
And that's going to have to take some doing.
Okay, because I'm imagining restocking, and this is not knowing.
I would
restocking
say
books,
that, it would seem that reshelving books and reshelving materials would seem menial, but it's absolutely crucial.
Right, yeah,
And there's an absolute science to putting it back on the shelf correctly, because if people just start putting things on shelves, and, because they're getting tired of doing it, then everything gets lost. So, I would I would not have them doing reshelving, given that we do have already volunteers by willing, I mean, not mandated work release kind of folks or community service folks, but folks, you know, retired folks and different things that have stepped up and want to assist us that do a lot of the reshelving. And that seems to work pretty well. So again, it's the challenge of finding, because what I would hate is that we can limit it down to dusting shelves or whatever. Not that that's not a bad thing. But, you know, when they say they get done, okay, what, can they just leave then? Just say, okay, we posited X amount of hours, but we run out of stuff to do. We just say, hey, this is all we got, and that's it.
Yes, that would be an option. I do have some sites that are just like that, where they have too many people on at a time, and then they just run out of work, and then they just have to send the people home.
Can I ask just one question? I'm just kind of wondering, what are some of the examples of the sites that you presently work with? Just to
I
see if
brought
there's-
mine in case anybody had those questions. So the majority of places that I work with are going to be like all the thrift stores, nonprofits, so like the ARCs, the Dakota Boys Ranch. The one that I was telling you about, like I work with the A.J. Thompson and Sons Arena, the hockey arena up in North Fargo. That one, they take like up to 15 people at a time, but they only really have like work of 3 people a day, because it's mostly just sweeping, mopping, and dusting. And then once that stuff runs out, then they do ask the people to go home. And they're notified of that, you know, the day that they start is like, if we run out of things, you know, you'll be asked to go home unless we can come up with another project that day. But yeah, so I work with like the hockey arenas. I have like Churches United, the Gladys Ray Shelter, a couple different nursing homes, and then like the Fargo Air Museum and the Children's Museum.
Is that mostly janitorial work?
With the thrift stores, it's actually the donations, like the sorting through things and putting things on the shelf. With the museums, it is a lot of the cleaning that they do. With the Children's Museum, they're actually fixing things that are broken. So if, you know, the kids break like a toy, they're in charge of fixing that toy and putting it back. And then a lot of my places too, like with the ARC or anything, with a certain holiday coming up, they're in charge of finding that next holiday and creating a station for it. And so like the decorating and everything, that would take time out of a staff member's time to get that done.
Have you guys run into problems that you guys have had to address?
Many.
Okay.
It just depends on what kind of problem you're looking for, but if at any reason you have a reason to not want that person back, you just call me. I meet with them, see what the problem is, and then I recite them, and I forewarn that next site about what's going on. So, but I've had, like, I was talking to her earlier about, I do have a client who hurt himself at a site, and we're working with him to pay his medical bill for the damage, or for his medical costs.
Yeah.
Thanks. I guess I have a question for you. So the reason it's on our agenda today is just for information, or are you looking for action in terms of the policy, or just, are you just looking at a decision on whether we pursue this or not?
Well, we debated about whether to put it as an action item or not, and we kind of put it as a potential, we have a quorum, we have it as a potential if we feel comfortable going forward on this, or if we feel like we need more information or not.
So the action item, if I could interrupt, sorry, the action item is specifically on a policy, and we don't have that policy in front of us.
Correct.
Yeah,
I think,
but the
I think,
pol-
I think where the action in my mind, because policy can be adjusted, obviously, but it's the broader question of how do we go forward, you know, per this conversation.
But the policy as it states now says, community service workers on adjudication release time are not eligible to become volunteers for the
I
library.
forget the actual language,
But
but it
that's
limits,
the-
there's limiting language in
Yes.
regards to that.
Yeah.
And in discussion with longtime staff, Deputy Director Beth Postema, she mentioned that in somewhere in the early 90s, they had situations where they had people come to work at the library in terms of community service. And this was back then, the library had a on-site library employee custodian person. And these people were under the auspices of this person to do menial cleanup or whatever. And they ran into 3 really bad situations and basically stopped doing it at that point. So, and I think that's where that language came from.
Well, if I, unless there are further questions, I'm prepared to make a motion. That's all right? I feel as though, 2 things. I think there's, I'm sensing a reluctance, and I respect our director and the staff position, so I'm sensing a reluctance both from maybe administration and our own Fargo Public Library volunteers. But I also know that those who are on community service release are our friends and neighbors and our fellow citizens. And so I certainly have respect for all. But I really am looking towards the input from staff at this time. And I do not feel that now is the time to begin implementing this program. I'm glad we looked at it. I don't think this is the time. I would certainly be willing and interested in a continued discussion, especially at the city commission level, whether as an overarching policy of the entire city that this would be adopted. But that is a preamble to my motion, and I would move that the policy remain as is relative to community service workers.
Opening it up. What do folks think?
You need a second.
Second.
Well, if there's but if anybody has thoughts, though, if anybody agrees with that, if they have their own ideas about this conversation.
Now, to leave it as it is, do we need a motion? We need a motion to
I
adopt.
think we were originally approving these
Oh, I see.
different,
I
Policies.
think we held off on the policy when
We
it was
did.
brought, because it was kind of like, well, we're going to discuss this
Right.
again.
So if I could
I think the motion is to approve the current policy
To approve the
As
policy
reviewed.
as is.
as reviewed.
As reviewed.
Is that what I seconded?
Yes.
Well, do you have thoughts about the idea of what do you think, Carlos, about adopting this or having, getting deeper into this or not? I guess I'm putting it
Well,
aside.
if we went deeper into this to understand how we could implement it to everyone's satisfaction, yeah. We need a bit more time to wrestle with some of their concerns.
Is that something that you guys feel like we could eventually get to a solution? Or how are you guys feeling?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I would need to explore further what kind of insurance they have available, what kind of work is available. I mean, so I think there's policy question and there's legal questions for risk management. So I'm not sure that I'm in a position to say we absolutely can get there. But
Is that something that folks would be willing to continue having that discussion if we, if we decide today, does that conversation end, I guess is my question? Or if it's something that's like not fully answered, do we fully get the answer at some point, or what, where does it leave us?
To me, it sounds like there's just nothing at the library for somebody who's just going to be a short-time volunteer person to do. So it seems to me that volunteer positions at the library should be something that somebody wants to put some time into, have some stamina to see it through. And some of these positions are just like, I just got to get there and get 5 hours, get done. And we don't have babysitters to watch you dust shelves for 5 hours. So
Sure.
I don't think the language in the policy needed to be that limiting, because I think the first paragraph is that we do a background check, and if you're not up to snuff, you can't go. And then there was that added phrase that just seemed to uninclude or be a little bit more, and especially you guys can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it needed to be added, because I think it would have been found in the background check that probably wouldn't have measured up to what they're looking for anyway.
So it's important to you to have the volunteers wanting to willingly be there, rather than, motivated by something else,
Time card.
exterior. Okay. Scott, do you have any thoughts?
I would have seconded
Okay.
the motion too. I just think in the absence of information of what other libraries are doing that have gone down this road. That would be the compelling information for me, is just seeing a few other libraries that have successfully.
We did, Sonny's
done
not
it.
here, but
Yeah.
Sonny was kind enough to do a lot of digging into that because he was interested from the last conversation. And I guess there's, you know, from at least what I saw from every one that said, well, you know, it's all kind of okay, to like 3 that said, well, we used to do it and we didn't. And like anything else, you know, I don't want to, when I speak of my concerns, it's not in a vacuum that I don't care about these folks and that we'd want our community to succeed. You know, the thing of it is, with the amount of staff time that we have and all the activities, and you hear that every month about what's going on and what staff are doing, that takes time. That takes a lot of time for us to do it right. And I don't want to do something, especially in this kind of a situation, because it's not fair to the person that's been there and it's not fair to the institution and my other staff. You know, I'm willing as the director going forward to have that in my mind, to be thinking for opportunities and be flexible in my mind going forward. Certainly within the best practices and acceptability of the city. I think that's number one for us. But, yeah, I want it to be right. I don't want it to be kind of clabbered together and everybody's unhappy and it gets to be, what were we thinking, why did this happen, kind of a situation. I just don't want that to be. So.
Okay. Okay, so go through the language again? Or do we just need somebody to second now, since that's kind of, Carl seconded? Okay, so discussion, which I think we just engaged in. So a motion to approve. All approve?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
any disagree? Okay. All right, so we will keep the policy in place as is. Thank you, ladies, for coming and educating us on this and taking time out of your guys' days to do so. It was very helpful. Tim, thanks for tracking these people down and.
Well, they're good people. They didn't run that hard from me.
Well, thank you guys. Yeah, and if you guys want to leave, or, you know, you're certainly free to.
Thank you.
A lot of work with you.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Good luck. Thanks, guys. Okay, so let's move on then to the statistical reports.
Yes, per your packet, you can see we're just around a little over 38,000 registered patrons. In terms of attendance or visits in September, this up 1% over last year. Year-to-date, up 2% over last year in terms of visits. Programming was up 12% September of last year, still down around 1% over last year. Because last year they had that eclipse, which was huge. Volunteer hours is down. Pam's down a few volunteers. She's working on that. They ebb and flow. Internet sign up, see that's down a little bit. And electronic activity, who knows how that system is counting them, but anyway. In terms of circulation, you can see that we're up about 1.5% over last year in September. Year-to-date, almost 2.5% up over last year. The 81,687, that is the largest amount of circulation in the month of September since I started keeping track when we opened up the 3 locations. So, and that's 3 months in a row where we've had record for that month. And a lot of it is driven by all the hard work that Jason does. And really the electronic overdrive books, that continues to grow. If you don't see, though, print is still very strong, too. Physical media, it's still what it's doing, but that's certainly going to, discussion we're going to have later in terms of the circulation policy draft, so.
Can you explain what the RB Digital is? Because that's got a 5,500% increase.
Well, yeah, that is a relatively new digital platform for ebooks and e-audio, but do they have e-audio books in there? Yeah. And it's a relatively small platform, basically through, kind of subsidized through the state. And you can see the 6 from last September, that's when it was just getting started. So it was kind of not exactly apples to apples right there. It was kind of just getting started. So obviously, the percentage is a bit skewed based on from when it first month or two in terms of folks not knowing what it was or not using it to, it's relatively small growth since then.
Okay, any questions for Tim?
I have just one, if I could.
Yeah.
I love seeing these numbers. It's always fascinating to see what goes on at the library. But I'm curious as to how our library compares to maybe the national trend or even regional trend. I wonder, do you just have any general observations about other library systems?
The last time I read into that is that I think the kind of exponential growth in ebook circulation had kind of plateaued a little bit. You know, our collection is still catching up, so we're still having that kind of growth. And I think physical books have kind of bounced back to a certain degree across the country. So I think for a library our size, it's great to see the numbers that we're seeing. So the market's kind of sorting itself out, and people are kind of sorting themselves out from electronic to physical in terms of books. So I think we're kind of, in terms of the growth of our e-collection, again, we've not quite reached that percentage to kind of find that, but we're certainly spending a lot of time to do that and resources to do that. So, I don't know, Jason, seen anything else?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, in many ways we follow national trends, and like Tim said, ebooks going up. Another national trend is that people are going to libraries for programming, for space, not so much for materials. And while we see the increase in programming, we still see an increase in material usage as well, which I think is really nice. So in some ways, we are somewhat bucking that trend a little bit in the sense that our print materials have still been very healthy, where possibly other libraries they kind of maybe trending down. Certainly with physical media is trending downward, and that's something that, you know, we're always sort of thinking about what the future of that is.
One of the things we've also started doing is certainly tying in physical resources. If we have a program on a specific thing, we also list, hey, did you know also? So you try and do the upsell, the tie-in, and all that. And I know we're working on merchandising for the strategic plan to see how we can mix things up and get things out where folks can see it. So it never ends. We'll keep working on it.
All right. Okay, so anything on that before we move on to the financials? No, on to the financials.
Yes, in terms of donations, in September, you can see in terms of unrestricted, we received of the $285, that's $25 from the Women's Club, a $10 anonymous gift, and a $250 gift from Richard Olafson. In terms of restricted donations, that's Friends donation for the Northern Narratives reimbursement. We went out and worked with a bunch of people to submit stories and poems and stuff to create their own little booklet, and they get a booklet, and the friends sell them, and it's a great thing, and they're working on that again this year. In terms of expenditures, the $449 is all friends money, $198.73 for crafternoons, and $249.90 for the outreach magnifiers, because of that large, the outreach population and retirement homes, they get devices because it's cheaper to get the magnifiers than to spend a lot of money on large print books. So, and the friends were generous enough to help us out with that. So that's on the donation end. In terms of overall budget, with 75% expended, again, we've been looking towards the end of the year, and it looks good. Certainly, with the projects that I mentioned earlier, so obviously the maintenance never ends, so we'll be keeping an eye on that between now and the end of the year. You can see in terms of revenue, just over $61,000 through the end of September in regards to that.
Okay, any questions on financials? No, okay. Then let's move on. So we don't have Bob here for the Friends of the Library report. So moving past that, we've already addressed the old business. Moving on to new business, we have a material challenge review to do. So let's dive into that.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Jason DeShaw. I'm the head of collection development at Parkville Public Library. And also head of the collection development team. So whenever we get a material challenge that comes in, Tim and I and the team review that material, compare it to our policies, and make a recommendation for the board. So, we got this material challenge a couple of months ago now. And so the team met and we discussed it, and I kind of summarized our thoughts here. Sort of to walk through the process of what we typically do is some of the big things we always do is we make sure that that the item we have isn't abnormal in the library world. Do other libraries have this? We typically use the OCLC WorldCat database, which is a global database for libraries to maintain what items they have. So usually a quick check of that, and that's when we pull up this 294 libraries number, that's where that's coming from. So at least 294 libraries held this item or do hold it. And we also want to make sure that the item isn't, what is this item? Is this a popular work? Does this fit within our scope as a library? And this one as well, it's a very popular widely released book. It's a brand new item. I believe it was released in May of this year, and it was also very widely reviewed. So we kind of just do kind of those common sense checks to make sure that we're in line with everything. And this book certainly falls in that. And then we also look at the item itself, with this, and also why the item's being challenged, obviously. And in this case, certainly an argument was being made that this book is about Benjamin Netanyahu, which is the Prime Minister of Israel. And so it's certainly a controversial figure, and it's a biography on a controversial figure. So there's going to be opinion as well as fact in any sort of book like this. And so while the challenge was certainly saying that, this is unfairly biased book, many of the reviews actually suggested otherwise, that it was sometimes begrudgingly balanced by the author, where they gave even, you could maybe tell the author was leaning one way, but they were very fair in their approach to reviewing or writing the book. And that seemed to be a common theme among most of the reviews. So we felt very comfortable that this book, wasn't some sort of call to action, propaganda, hate speech, or something like that. It was a very well-reviewed book and a fairly balanced book. And another thing that we always look at is on our material challenge, we offer the patron, what other items would you recommend that we have? And the book that they suggested, and they noted that we have it, and we do have it. And so that helps, I think, really in terms of when we're talking about access to materials, we're giving a balance to the conversation. So not only do we think this book is fine, but we have offered other books on the same topic as well. And people feel very passionately about these, and that's great. But sometimes that argument isn't with us as a library, because we're not here to judge necessarily. We're here to access or to provide access to materials. And so we feel that our bases are really covered in this. It lines up well with our policy, and so as stated here, we certainly recommend that we retain the item in our collection.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
And I apologize, it's oversight on my part not to provide the challenge in the packet. Sorry about that.
Okay. It's an action item.
Motion to retain the turbulent life and times of Benjamin Netanyahu within the library. Second that.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay, that is approved. so then, thank you for coming to that. Okay, so the next item, that's an action item, is the circulation policy draft.
Yes, in our work through the strategic plan and identifying, how we do things that are towards the needs and wants of the community, I received a request from a patron in regards to increasing the number of music CDs that we allow in terms of overall number to check out at one time. And certainly, within the context of the strategic plan, it seems pretty straightforward. Also, in terms of looking at the decline in circulation of physical media, it just makes business sense to open that up. And in discussions with my admin team and kind of looking at this, what you have in front of you are those things. Also, through the strategic plan was this idea of how we do things to add flexibility of use and access to materials. And also in here, we're looking at changing from the strictly having the library card present to check out, but to have acceptable picture identification per the registration policy, which is just the kind of common sense. If the acceptable ID was good enough to get the card, it should be good enough for you to check out. It would just seem that way.
Yeah.
So the changes here are really kind of working through with the admin team and kind of looking at what came out of strategic planning. So the changes are moving video games to 3 weeks as opposed to, I think they were just a week. And then changing music CDs from 10 to 20, audiobooks and recordings. This is physical audiobooks, obviously, to 10 to 20 in terms of limit, and DVDs and Blu-rays from 10 to 20. And again, the verbiage in regards to adding or acceptable picture identification per the registration policy. And basically changing video games because they're a 3-week to the same 10 cents a day. So this is kind of us kind of reevaluating how we do things based on the mandate of the strategic plan and trying to open things up for the community.
Questions? I had a question about the fine. So part of the, and I think this was addressed in one of our other policies that we already reviewed. But for the strategic plan, I thought they were trying to, you guys were trying to eliminate children fines.
We did.
Okay, so that's.
That's been done, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about this policy? I have one grammar thing. So in the first paragraph, starting with the line, however, the library has to ensure equitable access to circulating materials for all library users, and therefore, it says established specific loan period. Should just that be established? Yeah, without the ED. Did you get that, Betsy? Okay.
Miss Betsy has.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I had, though. So, it's an action item.
And move to approve the changes.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay. Oops, it's approved. Okay, so public comment, we have Betsy's back, but she's not technically public. So that pretty much ends us, but for mentioning that our next regular meeting is November 20th, which my guess would be that is the Tuesday of Thanksgiving?
Before.
Right before Thanksgiving?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, hoping for a quorum then. So, okay, so we'll adjourn.